I'm John Eckert at Baylor University, and I want to talk to you briefly today about assessment and feedback. Assessment is a word that brings a lot of terms to mind for both teachers and students, but if we go back to its Latin root, assessment actually comes from a root word which means to sit beside. If we think about assessment this way, assessment becomes all about improvement. In order to improve, we need deliberate practice that gets us feedback from more advanced peers or from a teacher or professor. So if we want to grow, we need authentic assessments that give us feedback that allow us to improve. To think about this, I see it as 8 steps. This builds on Jim Nottingham's work on feedback. I'm going to walk you through those 8 steps briefly with a fairly simple metaphor. So if we are going to climb a mountain, teacher and student, this is the goal. The goal is to get to the top of this mountain. Then we need to have an idea of where we're going. So that gives us our first step, which is that we have to agree on a shared goal. So teacher and student, or students, plan and agree on what that goal will be. And in this case, we are going to say that that goal is to get to the top of that mountain. Both the teacher and the student recognize this is the goal. Step 2. The student needs to make an initial attempt. So there needs to be work that the student does. That student starts at the bottom of the mountain and begins to climb. Okay? That's the first step that has to take place. After that, the student receives feedback, not from the teacher yet, but from themselves or from a peer. Now, this feedback needs to be based on clear criteria for success. Students need to know what it takes to climb the mountain. And then they need to be able to assess whether or not they're making progress there, or be able to work with another student to see if that progress is being made. And so what that means is that the self or peer observes progress. How far have I gotten? Where am I going off track? Where do I need to go next? After receiving that feedback, the student makes revisions. So in the climb, the student continues to climb, maybe makes some course corrections or changes, but they get to continue climbing, which leads to step 5. Feedback from the teacher or professor. Now, the great thing about this for teachers is if they're standing here observing progress, that student's already made significant progress. And the teacher can refine the feedback that he or she gives to determine where that student is, and then can give some expert feedback on how to improve. Next, the student makes further revisions. The student continues to climb. Then we get to what typically seems like the only place sometimes students get feedback, which is the grade. Sorry, I didn't want to skip ahead a step. You get a grade. Right? This tells you where you're at in relation to the mountain. Now, the student may have only made progress. So if the teacher's here giving the grade based on the feedback that he or she has, maybe they didn't make it to the top, but we hope always that students make it to the top and we can celebrate with them as they reach the top. And they've met that shared goal that we set out at the beginning. Now, the 8th step that Nottingham does not talk about, but I think is important, is some brief reflection. This is both for the teacher and the student, where the student reflects on the progress made, The teacher reflects on the assignment, on the assessment, what could be changed, what could be different, so that when they get to the end, the feedback doesn't stop, but there's feedback for both the teacher and the student to get better. If you have questions or want to reach out to me, you can find me on Twitter at EckertJohn, and also via email at baylor.edu. And my email address is just, let me climb the mountain with you. It's just John_Eckert at baylor.edu. We know that when we lead collectively, we get better. We need the expertise of others so that students get better as well. As we flourish as leaders, students flourish as students. Thanks for your time.